So it is Wednesday, August 28th, 2019. This is a live session. Get ready to take lots of notes. I put a lot of content into this program, and we are recording this. We will send a replay to you if you can't stay the whole time. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. Now you can hear me. And questions. There's a question box, as you guys have been putting into the question. Wade and Jim already put that in, so thank you, guys. I'll be looking at that from time to time and see if there's any questions. There's my email address on the screen. Question comes to you after this is over, or a week from now, a month from now, whatever, just shoot me an email. Happy to help. And there at referralcoach.com, resources, a lot of free resources for you, for your agents, advisors to tap into. And I'll remind you of that a little bit later as we go. So we're going to talk about building a thriving referral culture. Well, here's what we know, right? This is why referrals work, because they're borrowed trust. We borrow the trust in one relationship long enough to earn our own trust in that new relationship. And whether that's with an agent or an advisor trying to get referrals, introductions from their clients or centers of influence, or you in your role as in recruiting, if you're doing that, then we know we have to tap into that borrowed trust. So with referrals, of course, everything gets easier. And one of the things I want to touch on at the bottom there, it says referrals beget referrals. Studies have shown that a client that comes into a financial practice or business through a referral and introduction is 2.5 times likely to give a referral, which kind of makes sense that they'd be predisposed, that they met you that way. So what happens is over time, this word culture develops and this momentum gets created over time. So that's one reason we want to be very proactive and consistent with that. The king of digital media and social media, I should say, is Mark Zuckerberg. He says nothing influences people more than a recommendation from a trusted friend, even more powerful than the best broadcast message. He's made gazillion dollars with broadcast messaging, and yet he is telling us, make sure we master this referral, this introduction stuff before we worry too much about the social media. And not just referrals. You'll hear me use the word referrals and introductions kind of interchangeably, but we really want to think in terms of introductions, whether we're talking recruiting or whether we're talking an advisor, an agent, production. Because we got to get connected these days, right? It just doesn't work as well anymore, the referred lead. Hey, call George, use my name. Well, George doesn't answer his phone, and George is wondering why his friend gave his name out to someone, right? So we've got to think in terms of introductions. So if you or any of the folks that work with you are in front of a prospect, a candidate for the career in this business, a center of influence, a client, your own advisors, agents, if you're going to them for introductions to others, make sure you use the word introductions, because that's what we want. We want to get connected. And there's a ton of systems out there that touch on referrals. Sandler isn't on there. He touches on referrals a little bit. There's a bunch of stuff out there, but people aren't doing this, right? People haven't created the culture, even though we know that that's an important thing. You know it, or you wouldn't be here. So, what's going on? What is the breakdown? Well, here's what I've observed. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've been in financial services, helping folks like you and your advisors and agents get more referrals that turn into introductions, that turn into clients. And here's what I've observed. Usually when it comes to this, it's occasional training. It's an initiative, but not culture building, right? You might bring someone in to speak at a kickoff meeting, which I do. I love to do that. But we want to make sure that there's things that happen after that there's follow-up. And so I always have follow-up things in place to make sure that I'm not just speaking and leaving. It's not just an initiative. It's just not a little bit of training. If we're doing a training program, it's really sticking and the culture is being building. Not enough skill building. I'm going to touch later on the concept of nothing new to you, practice, right? Most people in this business just don't practice enough. I know that a lot of leaders and managers feel uncomfortable asking their folks to practice. But, just like practicing is a step out of their comfort zone, it may be a step out of your comfort zone to ask, but it's got to happen. That's how confidence gets built, is through the practice. I know that as a leader, as a manager, you're overwhelmed. You have a lot of things going on. And so that's why the things that I've built over the 25 years have been designed to make it as easy as possible to do the training and build the culture. And one thing we know that this referral process, because it's all relationship based, there's a lot of moving parts. It's not as easy to manage as leads and cold calling. Those are a little more well-defined processes, a little easier to track the activity and measure the activity. And I think that's one reason why cultures haven't been built as much as possible. And some managers, some leaders weren't necessarily good at referrals themselves. And so what happens is a covert contract gets created. It's like, you might think to yourself, if I'm speaking to you on this one, I wasn't particularly good at getting referrals and creating introductions. How can I coach someone? How can I hold someone accountable to something I wasn't comfortable with? And that's why it's so important that this culture building is all about leaders, managers using everything I'm going to talk about in recruiting. And that's how you build the culture, because it really comes from the top down. So we know that nagging doesn't work. We know we need a little bit more than that. And we know that building a culture takes time. So it really takes a commitment to putting the time and the energy into this. So today is brought to you by the letter C, and this is what it takes to create the culture. Commitment, right? Commitment to doing this for an advisor, to commitment to getting better at this, to stretching his or her comfort zone, building the confidence through practice, remaining consistent over time so the habits get created. There's a myth going on out there that it takes 21 days to create a habit. That's not true. In my new book, which I'll mention later, I've done a lot of research in neuroscience. Not scientific research, but I've been reading a lot. And they say that for the neuro pathways to start to form by the basis of new thinking, new acting, new emotions, it's about 90 days in to doing this new thing or thinking in this new way where the neuro pathways just start to form. So it actually takes a long time to create a habit, but ultimately what we want, of course, is that lasting culture. So here's our agenda for today. 3 simple concepts, and I'm going to go into quite a bit of detail with all of these. One is to teach a proven system, right? To make sure you have a proven system that works. Whether it's my system or someone else's system, doesn't matter. You got to teach one that you know is going to work. And I'll show you some evidence that mine works. I'll give you some ideas from my system. Some of the folks on this call, I've seen your name. Michael is on this call, and a few other folks out in San Mateo. Hey, Mike, you know my stuff, and some of you may be new to my stuff, and we'll give you a little shot in the arm around referral training right here. And then ultimately, you got to create that motivation to do this. So we'll talk about this is what it takes to create the culture. And then, of course, over time, not just an initiative, but culture building. So getting clients and candidates, it's not just about asking. That's an important part, and we all need to be willing to ask. There's really a lot more to it. It is the culture, and you'll see how that develops as we go through today's program. So I have a new mantra for your firm. If you want to start building this culture, I should say, here's what you want to do. Every day, start asking yourself, start asking all the folks in your firm, who am I going to be introduced today? Right? Who are we going to be introduced to today? Who am I going to be introduced to today? Someone's going out on an appointment to visit with a client. Who are you going to get introduced to today? Someone's coming in to the conference room. Whatever it is, start to make this your mantra, because we're trying to build the culture of getting introduced, right? And remember this, and share this with others, please, that cold calls are God's punishment for failure to get enough referrals. So if you're not getting unsolicited referrals to candidates, or if your advisors or agents aren't getting unsolicited referrals to prospects for their business, then there's something missing. And we'll cover some of that right now. So let me look at questions. Nothing coming in right now. So let's talk about the confidence building, which is all about teaching the proven system. And we're going to spend a lot of time on this today. So first of all, we got to make sure that there's a mindset in place. Whenever I do a live session at an agency or for a company-wide meeting, I'll always start with mindset, because all the strategies and tactics in the world are pretty worthless unless the right attitude, mindset, beliefs are in place. And we know that a lot of people walk around with a lot of limiting beliefs. We all do. You do, I do. And over time, we try to find out what those limiting beliefs are and get rid of them. So the first thing is to make the decision, right? To meet people the way they want to meet you, right? How would someone prefer to meet a financial professional? How would someone prefer to meet you as a career specialist in this industry? Well, it's from an introduction from someone else they already trust. That's why agent or advisor referrals are coveted in this business, right? They're the best because they're getting introduced to you by someone's already in the business. I'm not saying you don't do other things, but that should be high on your list. I always talk to advisors and agents and talk about the lifetime value of a client. The lifetime value of a client isn't just the business you can do with them over a lifetime, which can be substantial. It's also who they can introduce you to over a lifetime. But if you don't have that attitude in place, that awareness in place, you're going to miss a lot of opportunity that's right in front of you. Giving referrals. You know, a lot of people are afraid to give referrals. There's a fear there that something may go wrong. But if you want to build that culture of clients giving you referrals, of people giving you referrals, making introductions, well, you got to be willing to do it yourself. I was speaking at an event in Nashville in February. A guy named Eric came up to me. He says, "Bill, I think I figured out why I don't like to ask for referrals." He says, "Well, lay it on me." He says, "I don't like to give referrals." And I said, "Yeah, you figured it out, right? There's a disconnect there." And so we got to make sure that we're willing to get the ball started by connecting people. Most people believe that it's risky to ask for referrals or introductions. And that's all about giving them a system, a proven process, and creating confidence. You know, I just added this one recently to my program because, you know, a lot of folks, especially newer advisors and agents, sometimes aren't fully in touch with their value yet. And so they wonder, is their value worth sharing with others? And one of the things that you want to do with newer folks is to make sure they do get the value. And if they're getting any unsolicited referrals or introductions at all, that's evidence that their value is indeed worth sharing. So we got to make sure people believe that. When I do live sessions, I always ask, you know, fill in the blank. I blank to get referrals, and usually the first thing that gets called out is I love. And then sometimes somebody says I forget. Somebody says I beg. I said, no, this is a no begging zone. But when somebody tells me they forget about this, what they're telling me is they lack confidence, right? They don't have a process in place. They haven't practiced it. And so they just lack the confidence, and their unconscious takes over the meeting and they run out of time. And they say they forget. It's just a lack of confidence. So the attitude we want to create is that attitude of expectation. Now, I don't believe in the old school methodology where some of us were taught to say, you know, I get paid in two ways, where we're creating this expectation of referrals. We know that referrals, introductions, they're an earned right, but it is an attitude we can bring to the table. It's an attitude of confident awareness. We're confident in the work we do. We know we bring value to individuals, families, businesses, and then we're aware of the people that they know. Same thing in the recruiting side of things, right? We know you bring great value to people. Even just in the hiring process, if someone realizes they're not right for this career, that can still be a very valuable process for them, right? So we know we bring value. Now we start to pay attention. When you're interviewing a candidate, one of the questions you might want to ask, have you talked to other people about your desire to get into this business? Or have you talked to other people about the fact that you're exploring this business, this industry? And right there, sometimes you can come up with a few folks that might be candidates to be referred to a little bit later, maybe not right that second, right? So either you're committed or you're dabbling, right? Everybody knows what to do if they trip over it, but very few people have really made this commitment to building the culture. And quite frankly, that's why I'm in business, right? And, you know, while we have to embrace the digital aspect of the business, social media, email, LinkedIn, all of that, what we've got to make sure is that we're not hiding behind it. I see managers hiding behind this, leaders, I see advisors, agents hiding behind the technology when we know ultimately this is a relationship business. The way of the world is meeting people through other people, and the introduction is the warm way we get into their lives. So we can't be just dabbling in this. We can't be hiding behind it. So I want to give you my hierarchy of referrals. You've heard of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I think it starts with food and water and shelter and beer and pizza and Monday night football, something like that. Well, here's my hierarchy around referrals. So leads, if someone's new in this business, then yeah, okay, leads are fine. It makes sense. They got to pay the rent. They got to put food on the table, and they've got to get confident in meeting with people and telling their story. But we know in most businesses and most industries, leads are a recipe for mediocrity. And so we want to wean away from them after about 3 years or so. Word of mouth is good, but we just can't count on word of mouth to build a business as fast as we want in the direction that we want. We should all be getting it, right? That's a sign of being referable. I already mentioned about referred leads, not as effective as they used to be. Getting recommended, now that's good because now you're being vouched for, and that prospect, that candidate, that prospective client has heard something good about you, and you know that they're expecting to hear from you. And then ultimately, we want to create the introduction. Well, not ultimately. Actually, ultimately is the advocate, creating advocates for our business. What happens when we create advocates is not only do they recommend us and our value and say, take his call, take her call, meet with them, you should hear their story, but they also pay attention to the connection. They make sure the connection goes through. They bug you, they bug their friend to make sure the connection goes through. So ultimately, we want to build towards the advocates. So for 25 years, I've been teaching my referral process. And when I first got started, most of the firms that I work with hired me to teach folks how to ask in a way that wasn't pushy, wasn't over aggressive, wasn't the old methodology that just didn't feel comfortable for most people, so they wouldn't do it. And then I learned pretty quickly that most advisors and agents weren't referable. They weren't as referable as they needed to be. So we started focusing on client engagement. And then along comes the do not call regulations and just all the ways that people are so darn busy. It's just hard to reach them. It's hard to reach clients, let alone prospects and candidates. So then we started focusing on introductions. And I'm happy to announce that I'm almost done with my newest book. It'll be out hopefully at the end of September, maybe early October. It'll be on Amazon. And this is all about how advisors, agents, leaders, managers, anybody in a consultative professional service type business talks about their value. And we'll touch on this a little bit. I'll give you a little bit of the content from the book in just a minute. So that's where my business is headed and how I hope I can help you. Now, you've heard the expression, you can kill two birds with one stone. Well, that's, if you'll permit me, what I'm going to do is to kill two birds with one stone. And that is, I'm going to teach you some things that you can listen with an ear to teach, to bring to your advisors or agents. You can use for your own book of business, if you're a manager that has a book of business, or in your recruiting activity. And I'm going to do it by showing you the lessons from my Referral Coach Academy. So you get a feel for one of the new tools that I have that a lot of folks are using, and I'm going to teach at the same time. So we're kind of killing two birds at one stone. So no large pitch at the end, right? You'll just kind of see what I have as we teach some things, right? And so we have 5 main courses you could see there on the left side of the screen. And the first one has to do with communicating value and creating an effective value proposition. I call it a value positioning statement. Will an audio version of the book be coming out as well? Actually, Keenan, yes, it will be. I'm going into the studio next week, next Tuesday and Wednesday, for about 10 hours over 2 days to record the audio version of the book. We'll get it up on Audibles and a lot of other services. So thank you for asking that. And let's just keep going into this one. So, you know, the dreaded, what do you do? This applies to you as a leader or a manager. If you're recruiting, it applies to advisors, agents, just anybody who's trying to meet new people, right? And you answer this question, what do you do, in an email? You answer it verbally in a meeting, on the phone, in front of a group. There's a lot of different ways. Some people will ask you this question. Sometimes you have to introduce yourself by answering this question, right? So I have a formula I want to show to you. And I will send you this formula after. I've got some goodies I'm going to send to you afterwards. And one of those things is a worksheet on this, so you can see how this looks. And by all means, you can send me what you've developed. And so I can give you a critique, no charge, just happy to do it. So here's the formula. We talk about expertise. My expertise is in. Now, clients won't often, companies won't often let you say you're an expert. The compliance officers don't like you to call yourself an expert unless you have very specific training credentials in a certain area, but you can say expertise. I don't recommend leading with the fact that, like an advisor to say I'm a financial advisor, or an agent to say I'm an insurance agent, or a financial planner, because people have preconceived notions with what that means, and they might not have a great response to that. So we want to wait for that to come later. I work with, this qualifies, demonstrates the target market who want to, and this speaks to the benefits. Whatever your folks that you're trying to reach want are the benefits, right? And we always want to translate it to benefits. And because there's emotion, there's money involved in all of this, there's always emotion. And so it's easy for you guys and gals to put emotion into this. And then, even though these first 3 statements can say a lot in a very short period of time, and I'll give you a couple examples, it's not always enough. We want to bring it to life. So I call it value in action. It could be a story, could be your why you believe in the value that you bring, could be some humor, lots of different ways to bring this to life. So let me give you one this is a real life example of a gentleman I was coaching for a while up in the Connecticut area, if I remember correctly. So this is what he came up with a bunch of work on this. He works with, let me get the clicker working there, he specializes in financial planning for fast-paced owners and entrepreneurs. And this came out of a conversation with him that he just loved the fast-paced nature of entrepreneurs and small business owners. And so we want to put that in there, right? And what we're doing here is we're qualifying the people that we want to serve and kind of disqualifying the people we don't want to serve. And obviously this will change depending on who you're in front of. You want to tailor it and make it as relevant to that audience, whatever that audience looks like, as possible. So I work with successful business owners who want to focus on what they do the best, running their business and making money. But just about any small business owner who's a candidate to work with a financial professional will appreciate this statement. And he's getting great response, and this is how he brings it to life. He talks about himself as a financial quarterback, and he brings other members of his team to bear, his firm to bear, et cetera, et cetera. And it's resonating quite well with business owners. And he's made that decision. He's been in business about 5-6 years now, and he wants to focus. He knows the power of focusing on a niche. So that's one version. Bob Bolt's a guy I just finished up coaching with a little bit. He had some choices. He came out of investment banking, and he was thinking, well, I could focus on small business owners, ESOP companies. He had a kind of an affinity for women in transition. There are a few things that he knew he could do. And he finally focused on working with small business owners because he's helped so many small business owners build their business to get it ready to sell. He brought a pretty unique perspective and a lot of value that comes with him even before he became a financial advisor. So let's do a hypothetical one around recruiting. Now, this is something I just wrote up. I'm working with a few firms now on their value props. But nothing was ready to show you. So here's a hypothetical. Your words will obviously be different, but you'll get the idea. So my expertise is in career development within the financial services industry. So what do? Well, I specialize in career development within financial services. I work with self-motivated individuals who want to find a career that's rewarding on many levels. All right, that's pretty good. But we want to bring it to life, right? We want to tell a story. We want a short story, a short anecdote. People listen to stories differently. And this is kind of generic. You can tailor this and really make it come to life. We brought an individual, similar background of yours. He tried a few different things. He had a few jobs. He hadn't really settled on his career yet, blah, blah, blah. And then just the other day, he told me that after bouncing around from job to job, he finally found his career, his home. Evelyn asked a question, where can we send our value prop for feedback? Sure, Evelyn, send it to Bill Cates, not Bill Gates, we wish, Bill Cates at referralcoach.com. And I'll be showing that on the screen again as we go. In fact, there it is. So there was a question from Evelyn. Please put your questions in the box. I'll get to them as quickly as I can. Got a lot to cover. There's nothing in there at the moment, so I'm just going to keep going. By the way, one thing I can offer to you here is a complimentary strategy session. I'd be happy to hop on the phone for 30-40 minutes with you, your leadership team, talk about value prop, talk about building the referral culture, no charge, just a way to bring some value to you. If there's a way to work together after that, we can explore it. But really, I just want to make sure I'm bringing as much value to you as possible. So there again is my email address. So just shoot me an email. So who gives referrals, right? What does it take to get referrals, et cetera? Well, Julie Littlechild out of Toronto, Canada has measured this, and she found that there's actually a low correlation between client satisfaction and giving referrals. What we need to create is engaged clients, and engaged clients in her study, 98% participated in the referral/introduction process in the preceding 12 months. So how do you create engagement? Well, you're already doing it. Your folks are doing it. But I want to create a little more awareness around this. So first of all, the prospect, the client's feeling really good about the value. There's been a value connection there. They like the questions you ask. They like the things you teach. They like your responsive service and all that good stuff. But then there's also that human connection that needs to be nurtured from the very beginning and over time. And what happens, I'll give you 3 words that'll make a huge difference for your business, for anybody's business, and that's engagement, leverage, connection. And what happens when you create this connection and then you leverage that, which we'll talk about today, and then you get connected to those folks, it just continues and continues and continues over time. So a very powerful thing to do here is creating this connection. So let's talk about how you do that. So there's, from an advisor standpoint, but this also translates to recruiting. There's the prospect experience. That's the process of the courtship of getting to know each other. There's the new client, the onboarding experience. And then there's the ongoing client service engagement or promise. And we got to make sure in all of these phases that we're dealing on the level of value and delivering on the level of the human personal connection as well. So our second course at the Academy is about getting referrals without asking, which is becoming highly referable in this process. And so the prospect experience is the first thing I want to touch on. And again, we're connecting with value, we're connecting with who we are. One thing you want to make sure you share with folks, and you want to make sure you're aware of this in your recruiting, it's the process that makes someone referable, right? It's not the product, it's the process that you put people through. And people have to understand that. The veterans have to make sure they're not doing their process like they could do it in their sleep. Most successful veterans, of course, don't do that. They bring a tremendous amount of value. And for newer folks, we got to make sure that they have a very robust process and they follow the discovery processes you've probably taught them, and they don't wimp out on some of the questions, et cetera, because that's what makes them referable. And then engaging on the personal is the client-focused why. I call it a client-focused why. And this is why you believe in the value. This is something that should be communicated on the very first appointment, whether it's you interviewing a candidate for a career in this business, or an advisor, an agent talking with a prospect for their business. Talk about their why you believe in the value. And it goes a little something like this, a little role play here. We're in a meeting, that's a little bit about what we do and how we do it. I want to shift gears for a second and give you a little insight as to why I do this, what drives me every day. And whatever that story is for you, however you got in touch with the value, you want to share that. And that creates that human connection very quickly, very early in a brand new relationship. And this is what allows you to not just win the business, but also become more referable more quickly. So now the next module is the new client experience, right? The onboarding experience. And, do your advisors, agents have an onboarding experience? You do, of course, with candidates and how you train them and bring them in. But we want to make sure that we walk people down that metaphorical red carpet into our business. And I've been doing a lot of research on this, and the numbers I've had so far over a few studies with groups that I survey the groups before I go in and speak, roughly about 75% of the people that I speak to don't have any sort of client onboarding process. So let me give you a couple ideas here. By the way, I'll share these slides with you. I'll send the slides to you in case you're wondering, so you can look at this in more detail. I know I'm going fast, but you can watch the replay or look at the slides. And so there's different things we can do to enhance the value, right? A phone call after the first statement arrives, a simple thing that could be done. People really appreciate that. Invitation to an educational event quickly, early in the relationship, right? And then how do we bring value on the personal connection side of things? And there's a lot of things we can do with this, and you can see them there. Handwritten note from an assistant, a phone call from an assistant. Maybe the assistant didn't meet the person. Now welcome them into the practice. Lots of different things we can do. Just make sure there's an onboarding process that's driven by a checklist to make sure everybody gets it. So Brian Sweet's in Fairmont, Minnesota, and I've done some coaching with Brian and his team, and they brought the Academy in, and he has what he calls a 90-day dazzle. Now, he doesn't tell his clients that there's a 90-day dazzle. This is in the background, but they experience the 90-day dazzle. And everybody in his team is responsible for different aspects of it to make sure that after 90 days, these folks go, wow, so much more than I expected, so much better than I expected. So think in terms of that. And then finally, the ongoing client experience. I like to call it a client service promise, because in the word promise is the word commitment. And so you've heard the expression working on your business and working in your business, right? And most of the time you're working in your business, advisors, agents working in their business. Right now you're working on your business with this webinar, learning maybe a few things that you can bring to bear. And then you want to do the same thing for your relationships, right? So you want to work in your relationships. When you're a leader, a manager of advisors or agents, you're working in the relationship. They are working in relationship with their clients. But there are times when you want to work on the relationship. And this is one of the most important aspects of how you stay in touch with people over time. And I will give you another statistic that will kind of bear all this out from Julie Littlechild. She found that 40% of folks who are asked for referrals gave referrals. So we know we can ask and get. But 72% who were asked for feedback, for input, we call it a value discussion or value check-in, provided referrals or introductions. That's how important this value discussion is. If you're familiar with my material, then you know I've been teaching this for 25 years and how important and effective this is. We want to make this part of the culture. You make this part of the culture by checking in with your people. Even if they're your support people, anybody, checking in on a regular basis, whether it's a monthly basis, a quarterly basis. How are we doing, right? How's our communication? What's working? Anything I need to do better to help you do your job better? Checking in with the agents, right? Checking in with your advisors, and they need to be checking with prospects and clients as well. Ann McCollum out in Phoenix, first time she did this, she didn't even ask for introductions. She just had the value discussion and won a $1.3 million client. So we know this is like the minimum. And we just got a question, and so let me look at it. Jacqueline, hey, Jacqueline, please email slides. Jacqueline, I won't be able to save these questions. So best thing for you to do is to shoot me an email, Jacqueline. I know you have my email address, but in case you lost it, it's billcates@referralcoach.com. I don't think I can save the questions. I could be wrong. I'll look later, but you know how to reach me. So thank you for that. And so we ferret out unexpressed complaints, right? Most people don't like to complain, especially about the little things. We got to make sure those things don't fester. It creates better engagement. Sometimes you get referrals right on the spot, as I showed you. So here's an example of what an advisor might say to a client at a review meeting. There's different stages of relationship where the words are going to change, obviously, but this gives you a feel for what it might sound like. George, I want to take a few minutes to just check in with you about our communication, our overall working relationship. First of all, is there anything not working and I need to be aware of? Has anybody dropped the ball in any way I should be aware of? And usually they're going to say, oh, no, you guys are great. We love you guys. And occasionally they may bring something up. And now you know you're doing some good work. What is working for you? How do we continue to earn your loyalty? Now, you'll adjust this if you're going to be talking to your advisors or agents to elicit recruit candidates for you. It's the same basic process, right? You want to make sure that you're referable in the eyes of your folks, just like they need to make sure they're referable in the eyes of their clients. Rod Gibbings was part of our coaching program. I'm going to see Rod actually in early October up in Vancouver. He lives in Kelowna, north of Vancouver. And the first thing I have people do is just check in more often. Just do this for 2 or 3 weeks. And he says, Bill, it's like I'm sitting on a treasure chest. I didn't realize how much people really loved what we do. And he puts on a lot of client appreciation events. So one person said to Rod, he said, Rod, you make us feel like we're part of a club. And I said to Rod, so Rod, did you tell this woman that the club needs new members? No, I didn't think about that. I guess I should have. So that's how powerful this is. So are you referable? Is the career referable? Is your firm referable? Your agency referable? You individually, are you referable, right? If you're not getting as many recruits recommended by your agents or advisors, then maybe you're not as referable as you need to be. Something you need to look at, right? By the way, I know some of you are planning your kickoff meetings now. We booked a number already in January, February. Would love to do one for you. A lot of different topics we can pull from listed there on the screen. So yeah, we have some special packages for agencies, some nice pricing for agencies to make it very accessible to everybody. So we'd love to hear from you if you're interested in something like that. All right, so let's get into the asking, right? Let's talk about being proactive. Let's talk about leverage. So one way to do this is promoting, planting seeds. You may be familiar with this one. I popularized in the industry. I didn't invent the phrase, of course. One of my books is titled with this, Don't Keep Me a Secret, or you could be saying, don't keep us a secret, right? If you're talking about the firm and a career opportunity, please don't keep this a secret. Don't keep us a secret out there. It's a fun little thing. It's got a smile on the end of it. So if you don't have a sense of humor, don't use this one. But in most cases, this is something easy to say. And I've seen people get referrals, introductions without even asking, just from this. It just triggers the thought process in that other person. And they start to think of who they know. Or later, it plants the seed for later, right? Here's something that can go on your outgoing voice message. If you can't pick up your phone, please leave a message to the tone. Or if you recommend it to us, please let us know who we need to thank. This is part of the culture that we're talking about, right? Where this referral and introduction stuff is playing a role in a lot of different places. We're promoting, we're planting seeds, voicemail, we're giving referrals, all the different ways that we're creating culture, right? And then one of the most powerful things that an advisor or an agent can do to get referrals without asking, and really create introductions without asking, is to teach their clients what it would look like. And I will send you a report with very specific language on this, so we don't have to worry about going through that right now. But I will, in the follow-up that I send to you with the replay, I will send a report that gives the language. And essentially what we do is we cover the fact that everything is confidential, because sometimes they don't refer or introduce to close family members or close friends or colleagues at work because they're concerned about that. And then we want to let them know that we handle this with care, that we're not going to just haul off and call someone and embarrass them. And that's how we plant the seed for the introduction as well. So I'll send the verbiage in the interest of time. Now, one thing we got to make sure is we don't want to confuse promoting with asking. And a lot of advisors and agents and leaders and managers confuse that. Don't keep me a secret is great, but it's not asking. Never too busy to see if I can help anyone else you care about is a great thing to say, but it's not asking, right? So let's get into the asking a little bit. And this is where I teach my VIPS method. I'll go through it very quickly. We don't want to look begging and we don't want to look pushing, right? So pushy. So that's why we got to have that happy medium that allows us to get into this. So first of all, why do most people not ask referrals or introductions? Well, I think you know that it's fear. It's all fear-based, right? They lack the confidence. And if they don't have the confidence because they don't have a system or a process, then they feel fearful, doubtful, and they don't engage in that, right? You know, when I'm in front of a room, I always say to the guys and gals in the room, I say, look, you guys you're smart and you're confident people, right? You wouldn't be in this business, you wouldn't be in this room right now if you weren't smart and confident. But when it comes to asking for introductions, you turn into a bowl of quivering jello. It's all of a sudden, all that confidence and intelligence goes out the window, right? It's just fear. I was doing a joint program. This was a number of years ago. And Joe Winslow spoke to his folks. Joe's been following my stuff for a long time, and everybody in his office, and I think pretty sure he's the #1 producer in his office, gets a lot of referrals. But he said to them, he says, guys, look, there's still a part of me sometimes, not all the time, but feels a little uncomfortable. And then he said the magic words, I just don't let it stop me, right? And helping your folks get in touch with the fear, with the lack of confidence, with what my first sales trainer, Dave Sandler, called Wimp Junction, getting in touch with the Wimp Junction around this and not letting it stop us, right? Then, of course, addressing the concerns and objections. And I don't have time to do this right now. We can certainly talk about this on a strategy session if you want to. And if you're interested, we can touch on that later. I just got to move on to some other things. So with the VIPS, let me give you a feel for this. This guy, Sean, by the way, in British Columbia, attributes to a huge spike in his insurance production after going through our program. So discuss the value. We've already covered that. Think of the referrals you get as the VIPs of your business, and that's how you remember this. So the value discussion, right? Make this part of your culture. If you don't do anything else, make sure everybody's checking in on a pretty regular basis. Let your clients know, let your advisors know that you're going to be checking in. Right? You care that the value's there, right? You care that they're having a successful and being successful in their career, et cetera, et cetera. Treat the request with importance. Why do we treat it with importance? Well, because the work you do is important, right? You bring tremendous value, whatever your role is, and you don't want to look needy. So you want to come from that place of confidence. And that's where your why can sometimes, your client-focused why can be brought back to this. I'm glad to see the value in the work we've been doing. And I really believe in this. I'm on a mission to help people make educated decisions that are in their best interest. So I was hoping we could brainstorm a little bit, see if we can identify a few folks that you think should be aware of this opportunity, right? should be aware of an opportunity. You offer an opportunity. I was talking to someone yesterday. I was interviewing her for a program I'm doing in October, and she says she was never comfortable with sales, right? You've heard that before. But then she realized the value she provided, and now she invites people into an opportunity, right? In her case, an opportunity to make an educated decision that's in their best interest. So if you have anybody that's kind of struggling with the idea of sales and they just can't get through that for whatever reason, have them shift their thinking. This is an opportunity that we provide to people. And then we suggest names and categories. And I want to touch on this because this is really such a big mistake that goes on when people ask referrals or introductions. They throw open the whole universe. You've made this mistake. I've made this mistake. Who do you know we can help, right? And it goes nowhere. So here's the bullseye. When you're asking for introductions, the bullseye for you as a leader or manager, for an advisor or an agent, I don't care who it is, the bullseye is someone you know who's in their life already, right? A college roommate, a brother or sister, a best friend, sister and brother-in-law, Uncle Ernie, whatever it is, whoever you know is in their life, that's the best place to start with this, to come prepared, let them know you've come prepared. Now, the ring outside of that for an advisor and agent would be money in motion life events, right? What life event was going on in this particular client's life that put, you in their radar? And those are good categories. Now we can expand a little bit. We're starting to get a little weaker as we go out. LinkedIn, lists, directories certainly can have its place in this, and I teach how to use those. But you can see they're not quite as powerful as the first two categories. And then you can open it up to the universe and say, well, that's who I thought of. That's what I had in mind. Who do you think should be aware of this? So you don't want to miss that opportunity for an open-ended brainstorm. You just don't want to start with the open-ended brainstorm. You want to start with the bullseye. Bruce Davison has been running our academy for years. And he says, he told me this on a call recently, you can't be introduced to everybody. You can only be introduced to somebody. So we start narrow and then we expand from there. One of the things I've been teaching a lot lately, I think you're going to find really cool, I hope, is, that athletes before they play a game, a match, they prepare, right? They have their pre-game routine. Musicians, performers have their pre-performance routine. Well, I think advisors should have their pre-appointment routine related to referrals and introductions. And it goes something like this. First of all, they have to prepare an agenda, make sure people are running their meetings with agendas so they actually have time to do this and they run better meetings. And then put value discussion near the end or value check-in to make sure that happens. Don't put referrals or introductions on the agenda. Just put value discussion or value check-in. And then think for 30 seconds. Who do you know who they know, right? Maybe I can bring one or two people to bear into that conversation. Or what categories might you suggest based on your relationship with them and why they came to you? And then practice this. See, the problem is people, if they do it at all, they wing it. And they don't think through this and they're not prepared, and that's why they lack the confidence, because they don't have a pre-appointment routine related to introductions. And I want to touch on fun because I got this from Robin not too long ago. She says, I'm having so much fun with this, which is wonderful for me to hear because this could be a fun process. I'll give you a couple of real life examples. Art's a financial advisor in Baltimore, and he's a fun guy. His clients get used to him being a fun guy. He says to them, we're just brainstorming here. I'm looking for about 100 people. And his clients go, 100 people? Art, you're crazy. We don't even know 100 people. We only had 60 at our wedding. All right, too many. Well, how about 3 or 4? Now, all of a sudden, 3 or 4 is not so bad, and he usually walks out with 3 or 4. Doug is a financial advisor in Omaha. He says, well, we're just brainstorming here. First of all, do you know any lottery winners? And his clients laugh, and he laughs. And what happens? It's just any tension that might have been there is gone, and it's just a fun process. And so you want to teach your folks to have fun. Don't forget the complimentary session. If you're interested, shoot me an email. We'll set it up over the next week, 2 or 3, 4 weeks, whatever it takes. I want to touch on introductions real quick. I want to make sure we get to the other parts of this call. But a couple of quick things around this is to borrow a kind of a concept from the Food and Drug Administration. When it's approving a drug for the market, it's looking for, is that drug safe and effective, right? Well, that's what we want introductions to be. If you're getting introduced to a candidate for a career or an advisor agent's getting introduced to a prospect, we want it to be safe and effective. So one of the things you want to do is make sure that you can learn as much as you possibly can about this person. And the first two may be very obvious. The third one is great. This is for an agent, advisor, you, anybody. What's going on in their life that's important to them right now? And whenever you can find out what's on their life's radar right now and tailor the introduction and the approach to that, now you have a highly relevant introduction and a highly relevant way to follow up, and you're more likely going to pique someone's interest. And we got a question. Evelyn said, can you give an example of the third level money in motion events? Yeah, money in motion, you know, an inheritance, moving jobs for transfer of 401k, selling a business, life events, getting married, moving, you know, having a child, things like that are life events, money in motion. I hope that makes sense. Let me, all right, get ready for this. Okay. So I'd be happy to discuss this final lesson around centers of influence, but I've got to make sure we get to the other categories here. So one of my biggest frustrations in doing this for 25 years is my golf game. No, I didn't mean that, although that is a source of frustration. It's going in and doing a program and then not being followed up with, because leaders, managers, they're busy, right? I hated being the flavor of the month. I hated being, you know, a little money time thrown at an issue and then nothing happened. So I created a program that we call Rapid Fire Referrals, and one of my clients called it the Habit Maker. And it's a bunch of very, very, very short videos, 2-3 minutes, that flow for a full year after a program, whether it's a video training or whether it's a live program. So you got to make sure, if you want to build the culture, that you have follow-up to that it's not just the flavor of the month. So I had a couple questions come in before the program. I saw my email yesterday looking for some questions. So Jim asked, how often do you need to follow up with a client to build a lasting culture? Well, I'm guessing Jim I'm not quite sure of the question, but I guess he's asking about how often do you follow up with the referral request, or how often do you have to know someone, a client, before you build the culture? Well, kind of a generic answer. And Jim, if I don't answer the question for you, please shoot me an email. We can chat about it a little bit further. But first of all, you don't want to ask for introductions every single time you meet a client. You know, maybe the first time you go into, you know, they become a client, it's a good time to ask. If there's a deliverable like a financial plan or insurance policy, you could ask. And then maybe you skip a time, and then you ask the next time, plant the seeds in between. With some clients, you can become very referable very quickly if they have a very open personality. With other clients, it takes time to build this. So this is a little bit where the art comes in doing that. Now, in terms of your practice in general, it takes time to build a culture. But like, you know, they say that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step, right? And then Sky asked about what are some simple steps to get the referral machine started? Well, the value discussion. If nothing else, make sure your folks are checking in more, and maybe at least planting a seed. You know, I'm glad to see the value in the work we've been doing together. Please don't keep this important work a secret. Or I'm glad to see value in what we've been doing together. You know, I'm never too busy to see if I can be a resource for other people you care about. Or I'm glad I've got a happy client. You know, if you ever identify someone you think should be aware of what we do, let me share with you how I'd handle it, what it would look like, so you'd feel comfortable, right? So that value discussion and planting the seed, that alone will get things started for people. All right, so let's keep going. All right, so let's get on to the next strategy, which is to become a great coach, right? If you want to build a culture around referrals and introductions, you have to become a great coach around this, right? So Michael Phelps in 2008, he was swimming the 200 meter. He was going for his 10th gold medal, and something happened. His goggles fogged up. Sorry, yeah. His goggles fogged up, but he still won the race. He broke the world record swimming blind. When, you know, reporters found out about this, they asked him. He says, "Well, I dove in. My goggles filled up with water. It got worse and worse from the 150-meter wall to the finish. I couldn't see the wall. I was just hoping I was winning." Well, how did you do that? Well, I practiced swimming with my eyes closed. Right? I know exactly how many strokes. He practices for the eventuality. Are you practicing, right? Referral training or any other thing that you teach, sales training, you name it, product training. It's not something you did, it's something you do, right? It's ongoing. That's how you build the culture. That's how you build the confidence. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a difference between exposing people to ideas, which is a speech for an hour, or reading a book, and training, which I love to do as well. We have the video to do that, and you do that as well, perhaps if you're a trainer, and that's good too. But then mastery, and mastery comes from practice, right? So I'm just here to urge you, whatever your initiative is these days, just practice more, right? Help people get confident so they'll actually do it. We have a bunch of role play checklists that we use in the practice. We do it in threes. So there's an observer, there's the client, and then there's the financial professional, and they practice. And I'll tell you a great thing you can do. Whoever is doing the asking, have them give you or the observer their phone, their smartphone, and just do a video as you watch. And then they can see exactly what they look like and sound like doing this, and then get better and better and better. So you got to be a better coach. And then finally, part 3 is lighting a referral fire, right? How do you get this stoked? How do you do this in a way where we know nagging doesn't help, right? So you got to be a role model, right? If you're in production, model it through your production. If you're recruiting, model it through your recruiting. If you're covering appointments, make sure it gets brought up before you go on a meeting where you're covering an appointment, maybe with a new advisor or agent. Have an agreement. Who's going to have the value discussion? Who's going to go further in the VIPS method? Make sure that you model the behavior that you want. You cannot expect people to do things that you're not doing. And then accountability, but accountability with some motivation and inspiration. So you want to find out if you get people stuck in whatever it is, wherever they're stuck, you got to first figure out what is their personal vision, right? What is their personal vision in their life, in their career? What's important to them, right? You got to start with that high level first. And then you can start to set some achievement goals and behavior goals. And there's a difference between these two types of goals. Most folks will set achievement goals. You probably help your folks set achievement goals. How many new clients to bring in a year, or how many cases to write, or how many assets to acquire, or whatever it may be, right? But then there's the behavioral goal. What are you going to do on a day in, day out basis, or a weekly basis, or a monthly basis that's going to actually help you achieve the achievement goal? I was talking to a guy yesterday, and he calls it, he uses paper clips. Some people use pennies. And if there's some behavior, something, let's say, related to referrals that you want to make sure is a habit, well, you put 5 pennies, 5 quarters in a pocket, right? And every time you do something related, you have a value discussion, you plant the seed or ask, maybe asking's worth 2, you move it to the other side. At the end of the day, the pennies have been transferred, right? When someone's leaving, you say, all right, show me your pockets. So have some fun in this accountability as well. And then keep score. Keeping the score raises the score. And so you want to make sure you're measuring the behavior, not just the fact that they're getting referrals, but you're measuring the behavior that it takes to create this. And we have a report around this, right? They're having the value discussion. They're asking, they're getting, or not getting. They're getting introductions, or they're not getting introductions. And then you can see where it breaks down and where the coaching comes into play. If you're not keeping score in any form, if you're not tracking behavior, then you don't know where to coach. And sometimes, as a coach, as a leader, as a manager, you never take what they say at face value. There's usually something a little deeper going on, and you want to figure out what that is. And then please give your folks, give everybody in your life, in a soft, motivational, fun way, the gift of an excellent expectation. Right? They will never perform more than you expect them. And so when we give people the gift of an excellent expectation, sometimes they need that from us. Sometimes they need us to spur them to the next level. We need that outside force from time to time. We don't always have the intrinsic motivation to get to the next step. I know this is something I benefit from quite a bit. And what personal barriers do they have to bust through, right? And what personal barriers do you have to bust through around creating the referral culture? It could be getting people to practice. It could be using it in your own business in whatever form that looks like. But we got to be willing to do this. And then celebrate their success. Create a referral champion of the year. In many, many different companies over the years, I've been able to give the award out from stage, the referral champion of the year. Celebrate every aspect of it. Contests, prizes, fun, you name it. And that's what will create that culture measure this. When you're at meetings, just don't talk about, new clients acquired or cases opened, or talk about referrals, talk about introductions, talk about all that good stuff. And that's what will make this happen. And then finally, if you need to get somebody going, if they're kind of in a lull, raise the intensity, get into contest mode, right? If you're training for a marathon, you don't just run out, or if you're going to run a marathon, you don't just run out and run a marathon. You train for it, right? I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro about, I guess, 9 years ago. Reached the summit on September 1st, 2010. Well, I trained for that. That's not something you just walk out the front door and do. But when you train, what happens is you raise the intensity, and therefore your results are produced. So through contests, through challenges, through fun, there's lots of different ways to get into contest mode that raises the intensity, and people become aware of what they're actually capable of, right? Sometimes it's getting spurred by that competitiveness, and competition is for the competent, right? And that's what raises people to the next level. We have something we call the 60-day referral blitz, which manages the process over a 60-day period. And at the end, they emerge with incredible skill and confidence because of that. So a reminder, if you're planning a kickoff, a fall event, or a kickoff for the next year, we'd love to chat with you about that. We'd love to host a complimentary session with you to talk about what we talked about here. What are your stumbling blocks or the blocks of your firm? And if I can bring some value, I'd be happy to do that as best I can. I'm not seeing any other questions. No other questions have come in, and we're just about out of time anyway. So I hope you guys found this helpful. I'll send the replay. I'll send a bunch of reports to you. It'll be coming probably within the next hour, give or take. And, we just got a question. Keenan says, great stuff. You're welcome, Keenan. Thank you for saying that.